start by, I will, of course, start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I am presenting from here in Wadawurrung country in Ballarat. And Claire is coming to us from Djab, Wurrung and Jadwajali country. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I also want to pay my respect to traditional owners and elders from other communities who might be here listening today. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have the oldest continuous living culture in the world, and sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So today is our first CoRE Conversations event, and of course it lies within 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence. Today we are taking this opportunity to launch our new Taking Action Guide for CoRE Alliance members, which looks like this, and Lena has put a link into the chat as well, so that's up on our website now too. So this is the second edition of the Taking Action Guide to End Violence Against Women. The first one we published all the way back in 2016, and a lot has changed in the last 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. But what this guide does is offer practical evidence-based actions that you can take within your organisation to foster safe, equal and respectful communities. Your regional consultant can help with additional information and resources that can help how you go about implementing actions in your organisation. Today, Claire and I are going to spotlight just 4 of the actions that are set out in the Taking Action Guide. And we want to talk to you a little bit about why they're needed, why they're in there, and how they can contribute to ending violence against women and gender diverse people. So the 4 actions that we are going to talk about today are flexible work arrangements, diverse imagery, active bystander training, and family violence. The story. And Claire, can you click to the next? Perfect. So these essential action areas come from Change the Story, which is the national framework to prevent violence against women. And the guide itself, our Taking Action Guide, is structured around these 8 action areas. They're actions that address the gendered drivers of violence against women and gender diverse people, and the social context that gives rise to violence against women and gender diverse people. And I'm sure as CoRE members, you are familiar with Change the Story. Actions that we have included in our Taking Action Guide can be tailored and adapted to your particular setting and context and built into your CoRE action plan. And as I said, today we're going to be exploring just 4 of those action areas. The ones that appear quite frequently across different action areas, different of the Change the Story essential areas for action. And Claire is going to start by shining a bit of a spotlight on flexible work arrangements.
Thank you, Rose. So research tells us that flexible work arrangements are highly desirable, and they're a highly desirable feature of the workplace, and that more and more employees are increasingly seeking flexible work arrangements and even expecting those to be available. I think COVID has magnified that expectation, and it's also challenged us to think about how we work, where we work as well. Remote learning and working is becoming more and more popular. So it's led us to rethink what it means to go to work. We know that 90% of workers feel that they are as productive, if not more productive, when they work at home. And the Australian Bureau of Statistics tells us also that most employees wish to continue working from home. But working from home isn't the only flexible workplace option. So that can include part-time work. It can also include shift swapping, compressed work weeks, time in lieu, job share, and also, I guess, a new trend that we're seeing and that's being trialled is the 4-day work week, which obviously involves the sort of 100 rule. So 100% of pay, 80% of work time, 100% productivity. So those are just some of the ways that we can be working flexibly. And we know that there are many economic, health and social benefits that flexible work can bring to the individual, but also the workplace. Increased job satisfaction, reduced stress, reduced absenteeism are all, key things that we see when workplace flexibility is a normal part of our day, including increased productivity, which is something from an organisational perspective that is a real advantage. Leave and workplace flexibility is also one of the key indicators under the Gender Equality Act and is part of your Gender Equality Action Plan if you are from a defined entity. So results from the statewide gender audit that we did for the Gender Equality Act show that 26% of employees from both local government and health sector are on flexible work arrangements, but that more than 3/4 of those who are taking up flexible work arrangements are actually women. And we're seeing similar stats within our region as well, where we've got 75 to 80%, and in some sectors like the health sector, it's even above 80% of women who are taking up workplace flexible options or working part-time. So why are we seeing such a huge disparity, I guess, between women and men taking up flexible work options? One of them is obviously caring responsibilities. Women tend to take up more of the caring responsibilities, whether that's for children, for other people in life, or elderly people. Lifestyle choice is another one, and the mental and physical load of your job and workplace job stresses, I guess. There's also a lack of support services within our region. So things like childcare, before and after school care, and people needing to support their partners in their own business, whether that's farming or other types of businesses. So workplace flexibility is important. Men tend to be concerned about the impacts of career progression, and that's a preventative factor in them taking up workplace flexibility. And according to the research, 90% of women, this was Deloitte's research, feel that the organisation doesn't actually adjust their workload to allow them to take up part-time roles. There's also something that we know called the proximity bias, which is basically the idea that those who are close or are visible are more likely to get the opportunities for promotions or other workplace opportunities, and that remote employees are 50% more likely to be overlooked for promotion. So what happens when we don't get a gender balance in workplace flexibility? We know that this can reduce workforce participation for women. It can increase financial vulnerability, as well as impacting on the other social and health outcomes. For men, it reduces the family time or time available to make choices about how they spend their social time, and that can have health and wellbeing impacts as well. So in order to ensure that workplace flexibility works for everyone, it needs to be truly embedded in your organisational systems. So we need to be consciously thinking about creating a culture that allows people and everyone, men, women and gender diverse people, to make the choice and to make that choice without judgment and without repercussions. We need to think outside the box about challenging that proximity bias, and we need to encourage more men to be taking up these options to increase their family time, their ability to choose how they spend social time, and for the benefits of their mental and physical health as well. We did do a recent community of practice about workplace flexibility, and we had speakers from the Gender Equality Commission for the Public Service in Victoria. We also had Champions of Change and Viva Energy who gave us some great practical tips and ideas about how to create a workplace that's more flexible, especially for those frontline workers. So if you haven't already seen that and you weren't part of the community of practice, I encourage you to have a listen. There's some really great tips there. And that's available on our website. And if you are wanting more information as well, you can contact your regional consultant for more information and to discuss those options further. So the next indicator we'll be talking about today is Action Area 6. And this one particularly relates to imagery and diverse imagery. We know that images are very powerful, and we also know that gender is a social construct. So much of what we learn about gender and our place in society is subconscious. Whether we're aware of it or not, our lives have been shaped very much by the images that we see. And our perceptions and ideas about our place in the world, what we can do, can't do, what roles men and women play at home or in the workplace, are also very much shaped by images. They influence what we believe about us, not only ourselves, but what we believe about others. So people living with a disability, First Nations people, older or younger people, and people from different cultural backgrounds. The more we see of a certain type of image, the more likely we are to embed that as a stereotype, and the more that we believe that stereotype. As an easy way to challenge those stereotypes, we need to start thinking about telling a different story. Again, your workplace gender equality action plan may well include actions such as conducting an image audit. And it is really an easy way to challenge those stereotypes. So have a look at what the images that your workplace uses says about your workplace. Think about what's on your website, think about your social media, your advertising campaigns, any of the print media, job ads, etc. Do they challenge those stereotypes or do they reinforce the stereotypes? For defined entities, this, as I said, carrying out an image audit and creating images that support gender equality can be an action that is in your gender equality action plan. So if you're in a workplace that's either male or heavily male or female dominated, you can start and think about how do you create a more diverse workplace? And again, this is action area 7 in your gender equality action plan. So think about, do your images support existing stereotypes? Do they provide diversity? Because after all, we can't be what we can't see. So a really easy way of doing that is thinking about how those gender stereotypes can be challenged and how you can put forward the face of your workplace in a different way to attract different people into your workplace. Challenging traditional gender stereo roles can assist in the prevention of violence against women. Now, this is a great quote. The beauty of using photography to challenge stereotypes is that we can play a role in changing beliefs without necessarily having the difficult conversations. And for those people who don't necessarily like challenging conversations, this is a great way of doing it. Creating diverse and inclusive image libraries does take planning and it takes consideration. You need to consciously think about who's represented and who's missing and how you're going to work to change that without the risk of being tokenistic. Not only will your organisation be attracting new and diverse people into it, but you'll also be contributing to a safer, more equal and respectful society for us all if you have a go at doing it. And again, we've got some great resources to support your organisation in doing that, and you can also contact your regional consultant to help you with it. Over to you, Rose.
Thanks, Claire. And I can really recommend Mitch Dunn's Picture Change report that quote comes from, and Lena's put the link in the chat. It is a really great read about how you can do that. What I want to talk to you all now about is active bystander training, which crops up a lot in the Taking Action guide, and it's relevant to a number of change the story action areas, including the need to challenge the condoning of violence against women. Now, I'm sure as CoRE members, many of you may well have attended active bystander training, either with us through CoRE or through another training provider. It's a key string to the bow of primary prevention, I guess. But why is it important? Violence against women occurs at much higher rates in societies, institutions, communities that support and condone violence against women. When we're speaking out, we're actually changing the gendered social norms that are part of the wider context that drives violence against women and gender diverse people. So what the training does is give us the skills to challenge sexism, discrimination, harassment, and violence. It's a key strategy in building a speak out culture. And it's listed in Change the Story as an example of effective and promising practice as well. As many of you already know, it's not about getting physically involved in a violent situation, but it's about a much broader range of responses and actions, like confronting a friend or a colleague who makes sexist jokes, talking to your manager if you see that women are being treated unfairly in the workplace, supporting the target of jokes and harassment. And all of these actions play a really central part in this year's 16 Days of Activism theme, which is Respect Women, Call It Out. Essentially, active bystander training is about giving you the skills to call it out. It's the how of that theme. The next quote gives you a bit more of insight into how it contributes to a culture that condemns sexist and sexually harassing behaviours. So this quote is really interesting. It's from Manbox Men's Project research, and it says that men often overestimate each other's endorsement of traditional masculine norms. So the men in the majority, most men wrongly assume that they're the only ones, that they're alone in rejecting patriarchal beliefs and behaviours, and that men in the minority wrongly assume that their patriarchal beliefs and behaviours are actually widely shared by other men when they're actually not. So this is the price that we pay for staying silent. These assumptions, and this research is about men, these assumptions that men make aren't called into question. And that goes to the heart of why speaking up is important, because it's about challenging that social context for violence against women and gender diverse people. And there's lots of research to show that disapproval shown by those around us is a really effective strategy that contributes to preventing violence against women and gender diverse people. What active bystander training also does is give you the skills to challenge other forms of inequality as well. So we know that women from diverse groups often experience higher rates of violence. So for example, women with disabilities, trans women, First Nations women. And that's why we need active bystander skills to call out sexism and ableism, sexism and racism, sexism and other forms of discrimination. Basically, what speaking out can do is reset the social norms about what is and isn't accepted. And it's a fundamental step in working towards a safe, fair and equal society. The final spotlight, and we are racing through this, but that is the intention of these brief 30-minute core conversations. We're going to shine a bit of a spotlight on family violence leave. And this action is relevant to challenging the condoning of violence against women. It can promote women's independence, and the action area 7, which is about building safe, fair and equitable organisations. So it crops up in a lot of different places within the Taking Action Guide. It's basically about strengthening women's economic security and workforce participation. So since 2018, all Australian workplaces have been required to offer at minimum 5 days unpaid domestic and family violence leave. And from February next year, and also some in August, but essentially from February next year, 2023, this will be replaced with 10 days paid leave for all employees within the Fair Work system. Now, many of you as CoRE member organisations will also already have a family violence policy in place. And why is this important in preventing violence against women? Well, 1 in 4 victim survivors report that domestic and family violence significantly impacted their ability to undertake their job. And 1 in 5 victim survivors work in the same workplace as their abusers. So it's a workplace issue, whether we like it or not. We also know that nearly 3 in 4 victim survivors either didn't know what supports their workplace offered or thought that their workplace didn't offer any support. So there's a lot of work to be done in this space. And these research is that's fantastic, Fran. I'm just reading the chat. The research that I'm citing at the moment is from Monash University. It came out in October this year, and it's called From Workplace Sabotage to Embedded Supports, and it surveyed 3,000 victim survivors across Australia about their experience within their workplace. So by all means, Lena will pop it in the chat, have a look at that. It's a great resource. What that report also said is that women in secure employment are more likely to safely and permanently leave abusers. So if you can flip to the next slide. So that is really just, a really powerful finding. Evidence set out in Change the Story shows that workplaces help to shape and influence our views about gender equality and violence against women. And education, training and awareness raising that runs alongside the policy, the family violence policy, is really good practice. Workplaces that prioritise the implementation of a family violence policy and workplace supports like leave, like workplace flexibility, like increased security, being able to transfer to other offices, counselling, all of that is vital when it's implemented in a way that ensures confidentiality and safety for victims, survivors. The report that is the Monash University report also talks about the need for these policies to happen within a compassionate and empathetic workplace culture. All of this is cited as being really important to victim survivors. And that's why we've included it as an action within the Taking Action Guide. And we can also, you can contact your regional consultant as well about, we have a template, a core template family violence policy if you want to have a look at that. So by all means, get in touch with your regional consultant. Claire, I think we are tracking to time, which is great.
Which is great, yes. So that was four very short and sharp examples of actions in this wonderful guide and the new Taking Action Guide, and some of the evidence that demonstrates why they're important and how you can contribute to preventing violence against women. There's many, many more, so have a look at the guide itself. And if you're not familiar with some of the resources that are on the screen, also have a look at those. There's the picture change, which was the guide that I referred to in the image section. There's also many of the reports, and there's also quite a few in the chat box as well. So please feel free to check those out. And have a talk to your regional consultants as well if you've got any questions or you're trying to think about how practically you might implement some of these ideas into your workplace. We will be sending out the slides and links to these resources as well. So don't panic if you haven't taken a photo or not sure where to get them. Importantly, as Rose mentioned, we are in the middle of 16 days of activism. So we do encourage you to get along to any of the specific events that you're within in your area and within your workplace as well. So thank you for your time today. And as I've said, while this guide gives direct examples and practical solutions, it's equally, the context of all of your organisations is going to be very different. So it's up to you as core members to have a think about how you could expand and implement on these ideas. And also what's going to be most suitable for your setting and your workforce. So please feel free to contact any of us, your regional consultant, Rose or myself, and have a think about how we can support you to work towards creating safer, more equal and respectful communities that we're all seeking. Thank you for your time. That's pretty much us, and we're ahead of time. So are there any questions in the chat? We did say short and sharp, so hopefully it hasn't been too sharp, too rushed. It's.
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
Yeah,
I don't think there are any questions.
Yeah.
If you do happen to think of any, like I said, your regional consultant is a very good source of information, and we will be sending out the slides and resources as well. So feel free to follow up with any of us if you do think of any questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
16 days.
We'll see you next time. February is the next.